Hi, this is John Cullen. Welcome to another episode of Bedtime Stories. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at Jared Kushner and seeing if we can learn a little bit more about the man who's at the right hand of the president. So welcome to Bedtime Stories. I'm John Cullen. Let's get started.
In the waiting line, do you believe in what you see? 9 to 5, living life every day.
So demilitarization, this is something we're starting now that we have a new government in Gaza. This government will be working with Hamas on the demilitarization to really take the principles that were agreed to in the document to the next phase, and hopefully that will be successful. Without that, we can't rebuild. So if Hamas does not demilitarize, that will be what holds back Gaza and the people of Gaza from achieving their aspiration, and that's very important. So the next 100 days, we're going to continue to just be heads down and focused on making sure this is implemented. We continue to be focused on humanitarian aid, humanitarian shelter, but then creating the conditions to move forward. So thank you. Final point I'll just make is this is really only possible because of the work of so many people and President Trump's great leadership. But a lot of you have been asking, how can we help? So the countries have all been incredibly generous. We'll be doing the first conference where we'll announce a lot of the contributions that will be made in a couple weeks in Washington. From the private sector, there'll be amazing investment opportunities. I know it's a little risky to be investing in a place like this, but we need you to come, take faith, invest in the people, try to be a part of it. And then finally, I'll just talk to people on the media and on the social media, which is, this deal only happened because we worked with Israel, we worked with Turkey, we worked with Qatar, we worked with Saudi, we worked with Egypt. I mean, everyone worked together. We worked with UAE. We all worked together to make this happen. I see a lot of people trying to escalate, criticizing Israel or Israelis criticizing Turkey or Qatar. Just calm down for 30 days. I think that the war's over. Let's do our best to try working together. Our goal here is peace between Israel and the Palestinian people. Everyone wants to live peacefully. Everyone wants to live with dignity. Let's put our efforts towards promoting those who are doing the work to build this up, like Ali and his committee. Let's focus on the positive stories, and let's just calm down, turn a new chapter. And if we believe that peace is possible, then peace really can be possible. So we're going to continue to work every day. We need all of your help to do it. And again, I just really want to thank President Trump for his leadership in doing this. This would not have been possible without your commitment to this. Everyone thought it was impossible to end this war. You never gave up. You never stopped. Every time there was a setback, you told us to try harder. You gave us different ideas. And we've made several impossible things happen just in Gaza to date. And no reason why we shouldn't be able to make even more impossible things happen. So really thank you for your amazing leadership.
Jared Kushner. Jared Corey Kushner, born January 10th, 1981, is an American businessman, investor, and government official. Through his marriage to Ivanka Trump, he is the son-in-law of the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Kushner has served in official and informal roles in the first and second Trump administrations. Kushner worked as a real estate investor in New York City, especially through the family business Kushner Companies. He took over the company in 2005 after his father, Charles Kushner, was convicted on criminal charges. Jared met Trump's daughter, Ivanka, around 2005, and the couple married in 2009. He also became involved in the newspaper industry after purchasing the New York Observer in 2006. He was registered as a Democrat and donated to Democratic politicians until he registered as independent in 2009 and eventually as Republican in 2018. He played a significant role in the Donald Trump 2016 presidential campaign and at one point seen as its de facto campaign manager. Around Trump's election, Kushner was frequently accused of conflicts of interest, profiting from policy proposals for which he personally advocated within the first Trump administration. In 2017, Kushner was appointed as a senior advisor to Trump and as director of the Office of American Innovation and held both positions until Trump left office in 2021. His appointment was followed by concerns of nepotism. He led the administration's effort to pass the First Step Act, a criminal justice reform bill signed into law in 2018. Kushner was the primary Trump administration participant for the Middle East peace process, authoring the Trump Peace Plan and facilitating the talks that led to the signing of the Abraham Accords and other normalization agreements between Israel and various Arab states in 2020. Kushner also played an influential role in the Trump administration's COVID-19 response, where he advised Trump that the media was exaggerating the threat of the disease. He was a leading broker in the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. After leaving the White House in 2021, Kushner founded Affinity Partners, a private equity firm that derives most of its funds from the Public Investment Fund, the Saudi government's sovereign wealth fund. Kushner returned to an informal advisory role in the second Trump administration in 2025, serving along with Steve Witkoff as a key intermediary in diplomatic negotiations regarding the Gaza war and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In 2026, he was officially appointed as a special envoy for peace. Early life and education. Jared Corey Kushner was born on January 10, 1981 in Livingston, New Jersey, to Cheryl Statmauer and Charles Kushner. His father was friends with Bill and Hillary Clinton and attended several dinners with them. Morris Statmauer was Jared's maternal grandfather. His paternal grandparents, Reichel and Joseph Kushner, were Holocaust survivors who came to the U.S. in 1949 from Novorossiysk, now in Belarus. Reichel, described as the family's matriarch, led efforts during the Holocaust to escape from the Novorossiysk ghetto by digging a tunnel. Later, she became a member of the Bielski Partisans. Raised in a modern Orthodox Jewish family, Kushner graduated from the Frisch School, a modern Orthodox yeshiva high school, in 1999, and enrolled at Harvard University in the same year. According to journalist Daniel Golden, Kushner's father made a donation of $2.5 million to the university in 1998, not long before Jared was admitted. At Harvard, Kushner was elected into the Fly Club, supported the campus Chabad House, led by Hershey Zarki, and bought and sold real estate in Somerville, Massachusetts, as a vice president of Somerville Building Associates, a division of Kushner Companies, returning a profit of $20 million by its dissolution in 2005. Kushner graduated from Harvard with honors in 2003 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in government. Kushner then enrolled in the JD MBA dual degree program at the New York University School of Law and NYU Stern School of Business, and graduated with both degrees in 2007. He interned at Manhattan District Attorney Robert Morgenthal's office and with the New York law firm Paul Weiss, Rifkind, Wharton, and Garrison. Business career. Following his father's conviction in 2005 for 18 criminal charges, including illegal campaign contributions, tax evasion, witness tampering, and subsequent incarceration between March 4th, 2005 and August 25th, 2006, Kushner took a much bigger role in the family real estate business. He set about expanding the business and acquired almost $7 billion in property over the next 10 years, much of it in New York City. Kushner was an active real estate investor during his college years and increased the Kushner Company's presence throughout the New York City real estate market. Kushner Companies purchased the office building at 666 Fifth Avenue in 2007 for a then record price of $1.8 billion, most of it borrowed. He assumed the role of CEO in 2008. Following the property crash that year, the cash flow generated by the property was insufficient to cover its debt service, and the Kushners were forced to sell a controlling stake in the retail footage to the Carlyle Group and Stanley Chera, and bring in Vornado Realty Trust as a 50% equity partner in the ownership of the building. By that time, Kushner Companies had lost more than $90 million on its investment. He was the face of the deal, but his father, Charles Kushner, pushed him to do the deal. In 2011, Kushner purchased a 130,000 square foot office tower at 200 Lafayette Street in Manhattan for $50 million, selling it 2 years later for $150 million. In 2013, his company led a transaction to purchase the Jehovah's Witness headquarters in Brooklyn Heights for $375 million and invested $100 million into the site, transforming it into a sprawling office park and signing online retailer Etsy to a 10-year lease. The same year, Kushner co-founded Wired Score, a global organization that provides a digital connectivity certification rating the quality and resilience of digital infrastructure in buildings. So buildings get a Wired Score, and that's Kushner's company. Throughout 2013 and 2014, Kushner and his company acquired more than 11,000 units throughout New York, New Jersey, and the Baltimore area. In August 2014, Kushner acquired a 3-building apartment portfolio in Middle River, Maryland for $38 million with Aon Partners, later selling the complex for $68 million. In May 2015, he acquired a 50.1% stake in the Times Square building from Africa Israel Investments Limited for $295 million. Africa Israel Investments Limited is an international holding and investment company based in Yehuda, Israel. The company consists of several private and public companies active in areas such as real estate, construction, infrastructure, manufacturing, tourism, and leisure. The company's shares are traded, etc., etc. All right. In 2014, Kushner, with his brother Joshua and Ryan Williams, co-founded Cadre, now Real Cadre, LLC, an online real estate investment platform. His business partners included Goldman Sachs and billionaire George Soros, a top Democratic Party donor. In early 2015, Soros Fund Management financed the startup with a $250 million credit line. Kushner did not identify these business relationships in his January 2017 government financial disclosure form. He did, however, disclose his ownership of BFPS Ventures, the company that housed his stake in Cadre. In 2020, his ownership stake in Cadre was estimated at $25 to $50 million. Newspaper publishing. In 2006, Kushner purchased the New York Observer, a weekly New York City newspaper, for $10 million, outcompeting a bid by Trifecta Enterprises, a group headed by Robert De Niro. To make the bid, Kushner used money he says he earned during his college years by closing deals on residential buildings he purchased in Somerville, Massachusetts, with family members providing the backing for his investments. The buildings, which he purchased for $8.3 million in 2000, sold 4 years later for $13 million. After purchasing the Observer, Kushner published it in tabloid format. Since then, he's been credited with increasing the Observer's online presence and expanding the Observer Media Group. With no substantial experience in journalism, Kushner could not establish a good relationship with the newspaper's veteran editor-in-chief, Peter Kaplan. "This guy doesn't know what he doesn't know," Kaplan remarked about Kushner to colleagues at the time. As a result of his differences with Kushner, Kaplan quit his position. Kaplan was followed by a series of short-lived successors until Kushner hired Elizabeth Spears in 2011. It's been alleged that Kushner used the Observer as propaganda against rivals in real estate. Spears left the newspaper in 2012. In January 2013, Kushner hired a new editor-in-chief, Ken Kurson. Kurson had been a consultant to Republican political candidates in New Jersey. According to Vanity Fair, under Kushner, the Observer has lost virtually all of its cultural currency among New York's elite, but the paper is now profitable and reporting traffic growth. It boasts 6 million unique visitors per month, up from 1.3 million in January 2013. In April 2016, the New York Observer became one of only a handful of newspapers to officially endorse United States presidential candidate Donald Trump in the Republican primary. But the paper ended the campaign period by choosing not to back any presidential candidate at all. Kushner stepped down from his newspaper role in January 2017 to pursue a role in President Donald Trump's administration. He was replaced by his brother-in-law, Joseph Meyer. Politics. Political background. Jared Kushner had been a lifelong Democrat prior to his father-in-law Donald Trump entering politics. He had donated over $10,000 to Democratic campaigns starting at the age of 11. In 2008, he donated to the campaign for Hillary Clinton, and his newspaper, the New York Observer, endorsed Barack Obama over John McCain in the 2008 United States presidential election. After expressing disappointment with Obama, however, he registered as an independent in 2009 and endorsed Republican U.S. presidential nominee Mitt Romney in 2012 via the New York Observer. In 2014, he continued to donate to Democratic groups, but joined his father-in-law Donald Trump's nascent U.S. presidential campaign in the field of the Republican candidates in 2015. Kushner had no prior involvement in campaign politics or in government before Trump's campaign. Presidential campaign. From the outset of the presidential campaign of his father-in-law, Donald Trump, Kushner was the architect of Trump's digital, online, and social media campaigns, enlisting talent from Silicon Valley to run a 100-person social media team dubbed Project Alamo. The digital team tested more than 100,000 ad combinations a week, raising more than $250 million in small dollar donations in the closing months of the campaign. Andrew Bosworth, Facebook's top advertising executive during the 2000 campaign cycle, called it the single best digital ad campaign I've ever seen from any advertiser. Kushner, together with Paul Manafort and Brad Parscale, hired Steve Bannon's firm, Cambridge Analytica, to support the Trump campaign. Kushner has also helped as a speechwriter. and was tasked with working to establish a plan for Trump's White House transition team. He was for a time seen as Trump's de facto campaign manager, succeeding Corey Lewandowski, who was fired in part on Kushner's recommendation in June 2016. He had been intimately involved with campaign strategy, coordinating Trump's visit in late August to Mexico, and he's believed to be responsible for the choice of Mike Pence as Trump's running mate. Kushner's sprawling digital fundraising database and social media campaign has been described as the locus of his father-in-law's presidential bid. According to former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, who worked on technology for Hillary Clinton's campaign, Kushner's role in the 2016 election was its biggest surprise. Schmidt told Forbes, "Best I can tell, he actually ran the campaign and did it with essentially no resources." Federal Election Commission filings indicate the Trump campaign spent $343 million, about 59% as much as the Clinton campaign. On July 5th of 2016, Kushner wrote an open letter in the New York Observer addressing the controversy around a tweet from the Trump campaign containing allegedly anti-Semitic imagery. He was responding to his own paper's editorial by Dana Schwartz, criticizing Kushner's involvement with the Trump campaign. In the letter, Kushner wrote, "In my opinion, accusations like racist and anti-Semite are being thrown around with a carelessness that risks rendering these words meaningless." His estranged cousin, Mark, responded to the op-ed on Facebook that his lesson from the story of his grandparents was to renounce hate. Presidential transition. During the presidential transition, Kushner was said to be his father-in-law's confidant and one of Donald Trump's closest advisors, even more so than Trump's 4 adult children. Trump was reported to have requested the top-secret security clearance for him to attend the presidential daily intelligence briefings as his staff-level companion, along with General Mike Flynn, who already had the clearance prior to his resignation. Senior advisor to the president. On January 9th, 2017, Kushner was named senior advisor to the president, formally assistant to the president and senior advisor. He consequently resigned as CEO of Kushner Companies and as publisher of The Observer. After Donald Trump became president-elect, Kushner and his wife Ivanka Trump met with the Japanese Prime Minister and other Japanese officials, while Ivanka was conducting a licensing deal between her namesake clothing brand and Sane International, a company whose investors include the Japanese government's development bank. Although negotiations around the deal had begun in 2015, well before Donald Trump secured the Republican nomination for president, Ivanka backed out of the deal to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest. She sat in on a meeting between her father, then President-elect Donald Trump, and Japan's Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe. Kushner helped broker the sale of more than $100 billion worth of arms to Saudi Arabia. And during a meeting with Saudi officials at the White House to finalize the deal, he called Lockheed Martin CEO Marillyn Hewson to ask for a lower price on a radar system to detect ballistic missiles. Kushner's business activities in China drew press scrutiny for mixing government with business. Kushner's investments in real estate and financial services have also drawn controversy for conflicts of interest. In May 2017, the Wall Street Journal reported that he had failed to disclose all required financial information in his security clearance applications, including that he owes $1 billion in loans. While noting that it is difficult to calculate net worth using financial disclosure forms, The Washington Post estimated that during 2017, Kushner and his wife Ivanka Trump made $82 million in outside income at the same time that they served as senior White House advisors. Kushner and Ivanka's lawyers asserted that their net worth had largely remained the same. In June 2017, Saudi Arabia and the UAE had implemented a naval blockade on Qatar, accusing them of aiding terrorist groups, and reportedly planned to invade Qatar. In June 2017, Saudi Arabia and the UAE had implemented a naval blockade on Qatar, accusing them of aiding terrorist groups, and reportedly planned to invade Qatar. During the dispute, Jared had backed the Saudis and the Emiratis in the conflict, undermined efforts by then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson to stop the blockade and to bring the conflict to a peaceful outcome, and pressured Donald Trump to back the Emiratis and Saudis in the dispute, which the president did, according to the New York Times. In a statement, Abby Lowell, Kushner's lawyer, admitted that Kushner had intermittently used private email for official White House business. No classified or privileged information was used on this account. During the campaign for the 2016 presidential election, Trump repeatedly criticized his opponent, Hillary Clinton, for her use of personal email in her role as Secretary of State, which involved the transmission of classified information over a server Clinton had set up in her basement. In an HBO Axios interview released in June 2019, Kushner denied that President Trump was a racist. When asked whether birther conspiracy theories about President Obama, which Trump pushed extensively for a number of years, were racist, Kushner did not answer, saying instead twice, "Look, I wasn't really involved in that." In the interview, Kushner, whose grandparents survived the Holocaust and later immigrated to America, spoke of his own family's immigration history. "It's a great reminder of how great this country is." In the same interview, he defended the Trump administration's decision to drastically reduce the number of refugees accepted by the United States, the lowest level in 40 years. In March 2020, the Associated Press reported that Kushner had sold stakes in a firm that had benefited from the same Opportunity Zone tax breaks incentives for new investment in low-income communities that Kushner pushed for as a senior White House advisor. Office of American Innovation. From 2017 until the end of the first Trump administration in January 2021, Kushner directed the Office of American Innovation. The office, created by President Trump in March 2017, was to draw on the lessons of the private sector to solving problems in government, such as the federal government's IT spend, economic activity, and the opioid crisis. Firing of Chris Christie. Kushner was reportedly an influential factor behind the firing of New Jersey Governor Chris Christie as head of the transition team, as well as the dismissal from the Donald Trump transition team of anyone connected to Christie. An anonymous source familiar with the transition told Politico, "Jared doesn't like Christie. He's always held the prosecution of his father against Christie." Kushner told Forbes that the reports that he was involved in Christie's dismissal were false. 6 months ago, Governor Christie and I decided this election was much bigger than any differences we may have had in the past, and we worked very well together. I was not pushing out him or his people. In his memoir, Christie said that Steve Bannon fired him at Trump Tower, but that Kushner had his firing ordered as revenge for what Christie had done to Kushner's father, Charles Kushner, for several felonies. Russia investigation. Kushner's contacts with Russian officials came under scrutiny as part of the larger federal investigation into Russian interference in the election. Before meeting with the Senate and House Intelligence Committees, Kushner delivered an 11-page document describing his contacts with Russian figures during the campaign and after the election. Wall Street Journal called it comprehensive disclosure and said it introduced a useful precedent to the Trump presidency. Kushner has said he had 4 meetings with Russians during the 2016 campaign and presidential transition, and that none of those Russian contacts were improper. In June 2016, an agent of Eamon Agarov reportedly offered Donald Trump Jr., Kushner's brother-in-law, compromising information on Hillary Clinton from the Russian government if he met with a lawyer connected to the Kremlin. A meeting took place on June 9th, 2016, and included Jared Kushner, Donald Trump Jr., and Paul Manafort, who was then chairman of the presidential campaign, who met with Natalia Veselnitskaya at Trump Tower. That's Natalia Veselnitskaya. According to Renat Akhmetshin, who was also present at the meeting, Natalia claimed to have evidence of violations of Russian law by a Democratic donor, and that the Russian lawyer described her findings at the meeting and left a document about them with Trump Jr. and the others. According to the Mueller report, Kushner arrived at the meeting and quickly grew aggravated, texting Paul Manafort that it was a waste of time, and emailing 2 different assistants to call him so he'd have an excuse to leave the meeting. Investigators did not identify any follow-up from the meeting. The Democratic National Committee cyber attacks were revealed later that week. Between April and November 2016, Kushner had 2 undisclosed phone calls with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak. In May 2017, Kushner's attorney, Jamie Gorelick, told Reuters that Kushner had participated in thousands of calls in this time period and did not recall any with Kislyak. In December 2016, Kushner met with Kislyak. That month, U.S. intelligence officials who were monitoring Kislyak reportedly overheard him relaying to Moscow a request from Kushner to establish a secret and secure communications channel with the Kremlin using Russian diplomatic facilities. Kislyak reportedly was taken aback by the suggestion of allowing an American to use Russian communications gear at its embassy or consulate, a proposal that would have carried security risks for Moscow as well as the Trump team. Also, in December 2016, Kushner met with Sergei Gorkov, a trained Russian spy, compared to the untrained ones, who then headed to Venezia-Konobank, VEB, a Russian state-owned bank. Former White House press secretary Sean Spicer said that Kushner met with Gorkov briefly as part of his role in the transition and as a diplomatic conduit to the State Department. However, VEB, the name of the bank, has stated that Gorkov met with Kushner on a private matter concerning his family's real estate corporation, Kushner Companies, even though VEB has been under international sanctions since July 2014. The Mueller investigation examined this meeting and could not confirm VEB's account. The Mueller report did state, however, that it was unable to find evidence that there was any follow-up between Kushner and Gorkov after the meeting. In July 2017, Kushner appeared before both the House and Senate Intelligence Committees in closed session as part of their investigations into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. He also released a public statement. In October 2017, the Senate Judiciary Committee requested numerous documents from Kushner. Kushner's attorneys gave the committee many documents on November 3rd, But the committee followed up on November 16th with a request for many additional documents it said had not been produced. In early November 2017, Kushner was interviewed by investigators from special counsel Robert Mueller's office. Reportedly, the interview focused on former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. On December 1st, Flynn pleaded guilty to one count of lying to the FBI as part of a plea bargain. Bloomberg reported that Kushner is most likely the senior member of the Trump transition team mentioned in Flynn's plea documents, who is said to have ordered Flynn to contact Russia. Mueller investigated meetings between Trump associates, including Kushner and George Nader, an emissary representing the crown princes of the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. In August 2016, Nader offered help to the Trump presidential campaign. In December 2016, Nader attended a New York meeting between the United Arab Emirates officials and Jared Kushner, Michael Flynn, and Steve Bannon. Mueller also investigated Kushner's possible ties to Qatar, Israel, and China. 2 months after the Mueller report was released, Kushner's top-secret security clearance was permanently restored. Since the electoral defeat of his father-in-law, Donald Trump, Kushner has stayed active in the region throughout a non-profit organization he established. He took a special interest in the petroleum-rich monarchies of the Persian Gulf. Kushner attempted to raise money from the Persian Gulf states for a new investment firm he's founded. The transcript of Kushner's interview with FBI investigators was not publicly released in January 2020, as ordered by a federal judge, as the Justice Department stated it required a security review by an unnamed intelligence agency. The transcript was released on February 3rd, redacted nearly in its entirety. In June 2019, Republicans and Democrats on the Senate Intelligence Committee made a criminal referral of Jared Kushner to federal prosecutors on concerns that his testimony was contradicted by Richard Gates, a former Trump campaign aide, although the referral did not accuse Kushner of making false statements. Criminal Justice Reform, the First Step Act. Kushner was a strong supporter within the first Trump administration for the bipartisan criminal justice reform bill, formerly incarcerated Re-Enter Society Transformed Safely Transitioning Every Person Act, called the First Step Act, which President Trump signed into law in December 2018. The legislation implemented several reforms to America's prison and criminal justice systems, reducing sentences for certain nonviolent offenders and improving prison programs to reduce recidivism, among other priorities. In announcing his support for the bill, Trump argued that it would make our community safer and give former inmates a second chance at life. According to reporting by Axios in 2020, Trump expressed regrets in private about having followed Jared Kushner's lead in going through with the First Step Act. Middle East Peace Plan and Abraham Accords. Trump put Kushner in charge of brokering peace in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, despite the fact that Kushner had no foreign experience or experience in the Middle East. On August 24th, 2017, Kushner traveled to Israel to talk to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with whom Kushner has long-standing personal links and family ties, causing Palestinians to distrust him. He then traveled to Palestine to meet President Mahmoud Abbas in an attempt to restart a peace process in the Middle East. Donald Trump formally unveiled a plan authored by Kushner in a White House press conference alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on January 28, 2020. while representatives from the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Oman attended the event. Palestinian representatives were not invited. In an interview, Kushner said he'd been studying this now for 3 years and that he'd read 25 books on it. I've spoken to every leader in the region. I've spoken to everyone who's been involved in this. The plan, which was endorsed by the Israeli government, offered the Palestinians a conditional path to an independent state with defined borders. It's been characterized as requiring too few concessions from the Israelis and imposing too harsh requirements on the Palestinians. Both the West Bank settlers' Yesha Council and the Palestinian leadership rejected the plan. The former because it proposed a path to a Palestinian state, the latter arguing that it's too biased in favor of Israel. Reaction was muted among the Arab states, although Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Egypt, Lebanon issued statements expressing appreciation for the effort. The proposal gave American approval for Israel to annex its settlements in the West Bank, contingent on Israel and the United States agreeing to a concrete map for the contested areas within the West Bank and Jerusalem. After Youssef al-Otaiba, the UAE ambassador to the United States, wrote a June 2020 opinion piece warning that annexation of Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank would threaten better relations between Israel and the Arab world. Kushner saw an opportunity and stepped in to facilitate talks. The talks led to the August establishment of diplomatic ties between the United Arab Emirates and Israel, normalizing what had long been informal relations between the two countries, and ultimately becoming the first Abraham Accord, which was the first normalization agreement between Israel and an Arab country since it normalized relations with Jordan in 1994. As part of the agreement, Netanyahu suspended the annexation of West Bank settlements, which the Kushner peace plan had approved months earlier. The first commercial flight from Israel to the UAE later arrived in Abu Dhabi with a U.S.-Israeli delegation led by Kushner. Hours after the August 13th announcement of the U.S. brokered normalization agreements between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, senior Bahraini officials called Kushner with a message: "We want to be next." Over the next 29 days, Kushner and aide Avi Berkowitz negotiated and traveled to Bahrain before closing the deal on September 11th, 2020, in a call between Trump, Netanyahu, and the King of Bahrain. All three countries officially committed to the deals on September 15th, 2020, with the signing of the Abraham Accords on the South Lawn of the White House. On September 4th, 2020, Kosovo, a Muslim-majority country, announced that it intended to normalize relations with Israel as part of an economic agreement with the United States it brokered between it and Serbia. The negotiations were led by Rick Grinnell, special envoy for Serbia and Kosovo peace negotiations, with support from Kushner. On October 23rd, 2020, Israel and Sudan agreed to normalize ties, making Sudan the third Arab country to set aside hostilities in 2 months. The agreement was negotiated on the U.S. side by Trump's senior advisor, Jared Kushner, Middle East envoy, Avi Berkowitz, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and National Security Official Miguel Correa. On December 10, 2020, President Trump announced that Israel and the Kingdom of Morocco agreed to establish full diplomatic relations. The agreement was negotiated by Trump's senior advisor Jared Kushner and Middle East envoy Avi Berkowitz and marked Kushner and Berkowitz's fourth normalization agreement in as many months. As a component of the deal, the United States agreed to recognize Moroccan sovereignty over the Western Sahara. On November 30th, 2020, Kushner and Berkowitz traveled to Saudi Arabia for negotiations on the Qatar diplomatic crisis. The next day, Kushner continued to Qatar, but left Berkowitz in Saudi Arabia so the duo could continue to mediate the deal between the Saudis and the Qataris over the phone in real time. The negotiations led to a breakthrough, and on January 5th of 2021, Kushner and Berkowitz attended the GCC summit in Saudi Arabia, where the parties signed an agreement ending the Qatar diplomatic crisis. For his efforts in the Middle East, Jared Kushner has twice been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Years later, Kushner was invited to address a forum at the Harvard Kennedy School to talk about Middle East issues. Tariq Massoud, the school's director of Middle East initiatives, said he chose Kushner because, since he was the architect of the Abraham Accords. In the interview, Kushner referred to the valuable potential of Gaza's waterfront property, suggesting that Israel should move civilians from Gaza to the Negev Desert in southern Israel. U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. Shortly after Trump assumed office, Kushner and several administration officials initiated discussions with the Mexican government around renegotiating NAFTA. In April 2017, reports surfaced that Trump intended to withdraw from the trade agreement. Working with counterparts in the Mexican and Canadian governments, Kushner convinced Trump to set aside these plans and instead enter into formal trade negotiations. When the Senate confirmed Robert Lighthizer as U.S. Trade Representative in May 2017, Lighthizer commenced formal negotiations, leading on the technical aspects of the discussions, while Kushner managed the relationships with the Mexican and Canadian governments. On August 27, 2018, the United States and Mexico announced that they had reached a preliminary deal without Canada. A month later, Canada announced that it intended to join the deal as well. At a press conference in the Rose Garden on September 30th, 2018, Lighthizer stated that the $1.3 trillion trade deal would not have happened without Jared Kushner's efforts. In recognition of these efforts, President Peña Nieto awarded Jared Kushner the Order of the Aztec Eagle, Mexico's highest honor granted to a non-Mexican citizen, calling Kushner a grand ally of Mexico and an important actor in the U.S.-Mexico relationship. COVID-19 pandemic, actions and response. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, Kushner was an influential advisor to President Trump and shaped the administration's actions. At Trump's order, Kushner set up what has been described as a shadow task force, separate from the official coronavirus task force chaired by Vice President Mike Pence. The Kushner operation was staffed by a dozen young volunteers from the private sector. They worked out of offices on the 7th floor of the Health and Human Services building. Their first assignment was to facilitate the search for medical supplies and protective equipment, with their performance receiving criticism for favoritism shown to Trump associates. According to the Washington Post, numerous rudimentary initiatives proposed by Kushner interrupted the work of other government officials who were seeking to manage the U.S. response to the coronavirus pandemic. Gaza displacement controversy. In March 2024, during an appearance at the Harvard Business School, Harvard Kennedy School, Kushner described the Gaza Strip as valuable waterfront property and suggested relocating Palestinians to the Negev Desert or Rafah while the territory was cleaned up. The comments drew international criticism. Human rights observers and Palestinian officials argued that Kushner's proposals amounted to support forced displacement or ethnic cleansing. Former U.S. President Donald Trump promoted a plan to transform Gaza into a luxury Riviera resort, widely linked in media coverage to Kushner's remarks. The redevelopment vision, which involved large-scale relocation of Gazans, was condemned by Palestinian leaders, Arab governments, and international rights groups as contrary to international law. Personal life. Kushner has a younger brother, Joshua, and two sisters, Dara and Nicole. He married Ivanka Trump in a Jewish ceremony on October 25, 2009. They had met in 2005 through mutual friends. Kushner and Ivanka, who converted to Judaism in 2009, are modern Orthodox Jews, keep a kosher home, and observe the Jewish Shabbat. They have 3 children, a daughter born in 2011, and 2 sons born in October 2013 and March 2016. Career after the first Trump administration. Saudi Arabia Investment Fund. Kushner's firm landed more than $2 billion only 6 months after Kushner stopped working as a senior advisor for the president to invest in American and Israeli companies, expanding in India, Africa, the Middle East, and other parts of Asia. Investors included $2 billion from the Saudi Public Investment Fund, with Kushner stating that he hoped to open an investment corridor between Saudi Arabia and Israel, seen internationally as a sign of warming ties between two historic rivals. Within the first Trump administration, Kushner had been a staunch defender of Saudi ruler Mohammed bin Salman. In 2021, Kushner started an investment firm, Affinity Partners. He sought funds for the new company through the sovereign wealth funds of Gulf countries. Advisors for the Public Investment Fund, the Saudi government's sovereign wealth fund, expressed several concerns about the transaction, including the inexperience of Affinity management, the degree of risk to be assumed by the Saudi kingdom, an excessive management fee, and the finding that Affinity's operations were unsatisfactory in all aspects. However, Public Investment Fund management overruled them and invested $2 billion in Kushner's firm only 6 months after Kushner left the White House. The firm primarily depended on Saudi money, as by April 2022, it only had $2.5 billion under its management. According to ethics experts, the investment created the appearance of potential payback for Kushner. The House Oversight Committee said on June 2, 2022, that it opened an investigation into whether Kushner had traded on his government position to get the deal. The fund plans to invest Saudi money into startup companies in Israel. According to the Wall Street Journal, the decision marks the first known instance that the Saudi Public Investment Fund's cash will be directed to Israel, a sign of the kingdom's increasing willingness to do business with the country even though they have no diplomatic relations. In 2023, Republican candidate for president Chris Christie criticized Kushner and Trump for the deal, saying, "Why would you send Jared Kushner to the Middle East when you have Rex Tillerson and Mike Pompeo? You send him? Why?" We found out the answer 6 months after he left office. $2 billion from the Saudis to Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. $2 billion. And because he did all this and more with his family, I'm going to end this family grift that's going on. We are not a third world republic, said Chris Christie. The Wall Street Journal reported that Kushner has not made any investments despite receiving the funding some years ago, collecting tens of millions in management fees each year while not making any investments. Norm Eisen of the Brookings Institute suggested the payments were meant to curry favor with Trump's family should the former president retake the White House in the 2024 election. It appears to be money for nothing. The House Oversight Committee chairman, Kentucky Republican James Comer, said he believes Kushner crossed the line of ethics by accepting the investment from Saudi Arabia. As of 2024, the fund had made $157 million in management fees, including $87 million from the Saudi government alone, since 2021. The fund is under Senate investigation for possible foreign influence, buying ahead of the 2024 election after New York Times reports suggested that Kushner used contacts he made from his role in Trump's White House. In September 2025, Kushner spearheaded a purchase of Electronic Arts with Saudi Arabia's public investment fund in Silver Lake. According to the Financial Times, what a deal of this kind could face regulatory scrutiny in Washington. While a deal of this kind could face regulatory scrutiny in Washington, several people said they expect the transaction to go through fairly easily, citing the influence of Kushner and Saudi Arabia on the White House. Electronic Arts makes EA Sports, Madden football, that kind of stuff. Political memoir, Breaking History. Kushner wrote a memoir, Breaking History, a White House memoir that was published in August of 2022. Member of the Indian Creek, Florida Village Council. On July 8, 2024, Kushner succeeded Village of Indian Creek Vice Mayor and Village Trustee Javier Holtz, joining the Village Council. Diplomatic activity in Ukraine peace plan efforts. In December 2025, Kushner resurfaced as part of a high-stakes U.S. delegation in Trump's second administration. Alongside real estate investor and special envoy Steve Witkoff, Kushner traveled to Moscow and met for nearly 5 hours with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss a revised U.S. peace proposal aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. 2026 Geneva negotiations and Operation Epic Fury. In early 2026, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner led high-stakes nuclear negotiations with Iranian officials in Geneva. British National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell, who attended the talks, characterized Tehran's proposal as surprising and substantial, suggesting a diplomatic breakthrough remained possible. However, the negotiations collapsed amid allegations from diplomats and critics that Witkoff and Kushner had misrepresented Iran's positions to President Trump, specifically regarding Tehran's willingness to reduce its enriched uranium stockpile. Following the failure of the summit, the United States and Israel launched a joint military operation against Iran on February 28, 2026, known as Operation Epic Fury. In the aftermath, The Guardian reported that a Gulf diplomat criticized Witkoff and Kushner's role, describing them as acting like Israeli assets and accusing them of unorthodox and destructive diplomacy that allegedly manipulated the president into the conflict. On March 20th of 2026, Trump signaled a potential winding down of military operations in Iran, citing nearing completion of objectives, while Kushner and Witkoff were reported to be exploring a return to diplomacy based on previous Geneva frameworks. In 2017, federal disclosures suggested Kushner and his wife Ivanka Trump had assets worth at least $240 million and as much as $740 million. They also have an art collection, estimated to be worth millions, that was not mentioned in the financial disclosures initially. The United States Office of Government Ethics has said that the updated disclosures comply with the regulations and laws. Kushner was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in October 2019 and underwent treatment for it during the first Trump administration, he recounts in his political memoir. In August 2022, he underwent a second thyroid surgery. Kushner appeared in the 2022 documentary Unprecedented. In September 2025, Forbes reported Jared Kushner to be a billionaire. Honors. He has received the National Security Medal in 2020 from the United States and the Department of Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service, which he received in 2021. In 2018, he received the sash of the Order of the Aztec Eagle from Mexico, and in 2021, he received the Grand Cordon of the Order of Usam Alouit from Morocco. 2022, he received the Commander's Cross of the Hungarian Order of Merit from Hungary. This has been Bedtime Stories. I'm John Cullen. Thanks for joining.
The world was on fire, no one could save me but you. It's strange what desire make foolish people do. I never dreamed that I'd meet somebody like you. I never dreamed that I'd lose somebody like you. No, I don't wanna fall in love. No, I don't wanna fall in love without you. What a wicked game you play to make me feel this way. What a wicked thing to do, to let me dream of you.